Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of CookieCast. Today on CookieCast, it's the football podcast, and it really is the end of, I was going to say an era, but it's not, it's just the end of the football season. However, bit of a bumper episode. Have to apologise early on. We do have a technical hitch quite early in the podcast. It's hard to get good internet these days, people. That's all I'm saying. Before we start, please do consider like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review. And share the podcast around. That's the big one. Word of mouth and all that. Right. Let's get started. Here we go. This is CookieCast, the football podcast.
Recording in progress.
Ah, yes, indeed. Those three little words that we all love to hear. Andy's mouthing them along. For those of you that are joining us on YouTube, for those of you listening, obviously, it's the four of us. The quartet is back. Mr. Woodmansey, after his self-imposed sabbatical from last week, is back amongst us. How are we doing this week, gents?
You know, all kinds of average. Getting a little bit nervous about the potential of Sunday.
Well, we'll wait and see. Obviously, Stuart referring there to the Championship playoff final, which will see one of Leeds or Southampton leave the warm bosom of the Championship and rejoin a harsh, unrelenting mistress that is the Premier League. Will they be beset with the same fate as Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United, and be unceremoniously dumped straight back? Wait and see. I'd
kind of like it if that was the case in a way. Like if a particular team, who shall remain nameless, were to get promoted, and then just spent an entire season just getting absolutely pummeled into some kind of awful paste, and then spat back. That'd almost make it okay. Anyway, sorry, what were you saying?
Well, it was that pretty much that. I think, we'll obviously discuss it more next week once the result is finalised and we know which team is going up and which team is staying down. But last week on the podcast, we did go through our predictions for this week's, we went through the predictions for what was the last fixture of the season. The first of which saw Burnley taking on Nottingham Forest. I think we said last week that we felt this one could have it could either go one of two ways, be a bit of a sort of a let's show the crowd what we've got to sort of aim to come back for, or Forest could go a little bit wild and then score lots of goals. What did happen in the end, Mr. Moore?
I think we've got a bit of all of those things. I think we've got a bit of a kind of try and show a little bit of what Forest could be. That was the start of the game. Got a bit of the bad old days for the kind of middle bit, and then a kind of bit of a look to the future at the end of the game, with that kind of thing. So yeah, so Forest kind of came out of the gate pretty quick. Wood scored, I think, after 3 minutes. Quite a nice goal. Alanga got it out on the right. Did what he hasn't done for a while, just kind of flick it past the fullback and go at pace. Nice cross across the goal in that kind of, as they kind of coined the phrase from cricket, the corridor of uncertainty, and Wood was at the back stick, and I mean it went in, it was going up. Would be my kind of review of the goal. It was. I mean, he did a good job at trying to miss it. When I watched it, I was like, "Oh Jesus, mate! You know, kind of, can we just not like knock it in, kind of just steady away along the ground into the back of the net, as opposed to it doesn't have to go into the roof of the net." I mean, it's like all of a sudden he's got those new Adidas Predator spoons on. The second goal it took a little while for him to decide what it was. I think Ryan Yates took a shot from outside the box, and Wood redirected it past the keeper. It went to VAR, and he was played onside by someone who was so far away, it was unbelievable. So after VAR check, goal given. Each time, Chris Wood gave it big licks with the celebration. So I don't know whether the Burnley fans have been giving him shit, but he definitely gave it the big celebration in front. It was in front of the Forest fans as well. Obviously, who knows what the offside rule is, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm not saying it should be changed, but Chris Wood was played onside by somebody who was out of the right-hand side of the penalty area. Now, if it was the opposite way around, and the attacker was in that position, they wouldn't have been given offside because they weren't involved in play. So why on the flip side with the defenders, when a player is not involved in the play, I know it's the rule, but why has the rule not changed to go with that? It was just a thought kind of thing to it. I know it makes it more confusing, and obviously attackers use that line, like the invisible line as the thing. But I just thought it's a strange kind of thing of, the attackers can just be wandering around wherever they want as long as they're not involved in play, but the defenders have all got to stick to this imaginary line. So then I think I text you guys. Bad Forest came back. Cullen was allowed a shot from the edge of the box. No one closed him down. It took quite a big deflection off Murillo's back foot, and that keeper completely wrong-footed back in the back of the net. But Forest managed to see out the rest of the game. A few good chances here and there, but yeah, safety confirmed via their result and the results of obviously Burnley, who were already down, and Luton losing as well to Fulham, I think.
2-4 in the end, I think.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So no, like you said, mission achieved and mission accomplished. Really, they knew going into it they needed just a point to be absolutely certain. But why go for the point when you can get all three? And
the one thing I was shocked was, so obviously Forest finish on 32 points, but if you add the 4 points deduction back on, that's 36 points. That has been good enough to stay up 21 seasons out of what we're on now, 20 odd,
30 odd. I think we're into 30 odd, maybe.
Well, yeah, it was something like 21 to 24 seasons out of the total seasons in the Premier League. 36 points has been good enough to stay up. So it's not a stellar season by any means, but it's not quite as bad as people would have you kind of make out.
Yeah, I think this is weird because I was supposed to actually do this and I completely forgot. But this would have been, I'm pretty sure this is the lowest total that would have kept the team safe. So 27 points would have been enough to keep the team up this season because Luton only got up to 26. So I don't think it's ever been as low as in the 30s. Well, it's been obviously there's been times it's been in the 30s, as you discussed just there. But I don't think it's ever been as low as in the 20s.
No.
So
without. I'm not saying.
Recording in progress.
Yes. So, a little bit choppy there. But I believe what we were saying when the feed was unceremoniously disconnected was that the golfing class between the newly promoted sides that come into the Premier League and the teams that have been almost fighting against relegation from the previous season seems to be almost getting wider and wider as the seasons go by. And obviously this was the biggest sort of example of that being the case when, what was it, the combined total points of the three promoted sides was something like 64, 66, which, when you consider that 5 teams got that or better this season on their own, is kind of ridiculous.
Well,
It's okay though, because Luton can use the money to go and revamp their stadium now properly and actually have a proper go next time rather than bending all of the rules to stay up.
Oh, can you hear that? I think that is the sound of the viewers' figures in Luton going down the toilet. Oh dear.
I think it kind of relates more kind of to, like, you know, the trouble Forest have got themselves into. You know, if you're a club that haven't yo-yoed and got the parachute payment, to be able to compete in the Premier League and not just go down like a, you know, like we said it last year, like a good boy. You just go down like a good boy, and we'll just, you know, we'll just be there as the whipping boys for everybody else, and you can come back in a year's time when you've taken your parachute payment and had another good go. And so Forest didn't do that, got themselves into trouble, but stayed up. Whereas Sheffield United might as well not bothered. You really shouldn't just might as well have not bothered, because they sold their best players because they were financially fucked, and they're just going to go back down and maybe reinvest. But if they're still buggered, they're not going to. Burnley, I mean, the fact that their manager's possibly going to Bayern Munich is absolutely hilarious. But they kind of didn't. There's like, they brought in 14 players, but they didn't go nuts kind of thing. You know, Sanderberg was probably their most impressive
I agree with that completely, because like when you look at the players they signed, there wasn't a single player there that we were like, wow, that's a statement for that division. Not a single one.
I mean, Trafford was probably the one that most people were like, ooh, that's an interesting one.
And that was entirely based on the fact that he won an international trophy with an England underage team.
Yeah. So, and then Luton, who gave it the best shot, pretty much kept their own team together. And
they were always going to be in a position where they were like, whatever they spent was going to be a record. Because I'm pretty sure at that point their record transfer was when they'd signed Carl and Morris, like the season before, for about £1 million from Barnsley. So, whatever, I'm pretty sure their record ended up being Ryan Giles from Wolves, and that was £5 million. And he didn't even end the season at that club. So, goes to prove exactly what their scouting department was basically all about. They clearly were like, well, did we have any? We didn't really have the best of times against Borough, did we? Who was that lad who was down there left hand side? He played all right, didn't he? Yeah, we'll go for him. We'll just sign him. It's fine.
But they'll coin it. Obviously, they'll coin it from the Premier League and not spending much money that way, and they'll coin it from probably 4 or 5 of their players possibly being picked up by Premier League teams. Probably Alfie Doherty. I think like some people are interested in, is it Adebayo, the striker?
I'd say, to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if most of the forward line gets picked up by someone. Because like Morris will probably get picked up by somebody, because he proved he could score goals. So he's the sort of striker where, like, if Ipswich did decide they need to sign another striker, he's the sort of striker who fits in that sort of mould, because he's ready-made for, if they do go back down, that he can stay around in the Championship. But if like Luton do decide that, oh well, if we can get 15 million for him or something like that, then we'll see what happens.
Perfect club.
They won't need him.
Perfect club for him. Go on, sorry.
Ipswich won't need him because they've got Kiefer Moore.
Oh.
As long as his knee lasts more than 20 minutes, that's poor lad.
Shudder.
Yeah.
He's a perfect Dyche player. He'll end up at Everton, Boris.
Yeah. Shit house forward would slot him perfectly. Well, just for admin purposes, predictions wise, I was the only one who had a Burnley win. I had Brune Larson, Berg, and Hudson-Odoi to score the goals across the board, 2-1. So I get 0 points. More fool me. We're going with Burnley to win. What a fool. Matt had gone for a 3-3 draw. He had also gone for Brune Larson and Berg to score, but I'd also got Amdouni for Burnley. But had Awonyi, Elanga, and Wood to score for Forest. So bags himself a bonus point for the goal scorer. Andy had gone for a 2-0 Forest win with Awonyi and Wood to score. So 2 points for Mr. Cook. Stuart Woodmansey, 2-1 Nottingham Forest win bags him 2 points. Sadly, no Vitinho goal for Burnley. No Awonyi goal for Forest, but a Wood goal does bag him a bonus point. So 3 points for Mr. Woodmansey there. And to round us off, the final game of the season from our team's perspectives was Andrew's adopted side Manchester City taking on West Ham United. Obviously, they went into this one knowing that any form of there wasn't any form of points. A win would guarantee them a 4th straight top flight title, which as of yet no team has achieved. And it took them all of 115 seconds, which, as was pointed out in the group today, and has been said on the socials, isn't it ironic that in the 115th second they managed to score a goal to secure them yet another league championship when they have how many EFL charges ringing against them at the moment?
I mean, maybe I don't want the emailers to email incorrectness on our inability to count time, but it was 1 minute and 15 seconds. So
was
75,
it?
75
seconds.
seconds.
I thought it was 1 minute and 45 seconds.
No,
I think what we've just discovered, it Paul's the Manchester City accountant.
He's hoping to get as many charges as there were seconds on the clock. 75, we managed to get them down 40 lads. It's alright.
Oh, bloody hell. Jesus Christ. 1 minute and 15 seconds. Yes, Matthew was indeed correct.
I just didn't want the emailers coming in and questioning your ability to tell time.
Apologies. But yeah, and let's be honest, what a fucking strike it was. The thing that I don't think anyone, like, unless I just completely missed the sort of the coverage of it, the thing that, like, I thought was the best about it wasn't the strike. It was what he did with his foot afterwards. So, like, he almost put the sort of, like, you could tell that he put the fade on it because of the way that he shaped his foot after he made contact with it. Does that make sense?
Well, like the follow through, basically.
Yeah, so it's like he's hit it, and then you can tell as he goes to plant his leg that he's put the swaz on it, I believe, like someone like Micah Richards would say. But yeah, I mean, obviously, he a couple of days previous, he'd been voted as the player of the season. And what a way to cap it with what is slowly, or very, very quickly, should I say, becoming the quintessential Phil Foden strike. Picking the ball up on the right hand side, driving in, cutting in on his left foot, and just absolutely smashing it into the top corner. What a great finish! And yeah, just a really, really good strike to get the game off, as Man City needed it to. On the 18th minute, he made it 2. He managed to get on the end of a cross that had managed to make its way in into the box to make it 2-0 and easy coasting for Man City. West Ham did try to make a game of it, when Mohamed Kudus got one back on the 42nd minute for West Ham. It was quite a little neatly taken overhead kick, actually. He managed to sort of make himself the space with his back to goal. He managed to get one of those ones where he just sort of almost like chips it up for himself and then fires it past the keeper who had no chance. So it was 2-1 at half time. Possibly a little bit nervy for City when they came out in the start of the second half. But to make it sure, it seemed to be the man for the big occasion, as he always does, pops up in the right place at the right time. Rodri, on the 59th minute, managed to find himself at the edge of the box, and in what is probably very Rodri-style fashion, he just passed the ball into the corner of the net, past Areola, to make it 3-1, and comfortable again for City on their course to a fourth Premier League crown in a row. And that is how the game finished. 3-1 to Manchester City. Very well done. New Premier League champions again. Surprisingly enough, we all had Manchester City wins on the predictions. Andy had 2-0. Sadly, his Haaland and Alvarez prediction did not help him out this time, so just the 1 point from Mr. Cook. Myself and Matt had both gone for 3-0. I had Haaland, Alvarez and Bob. Matt had Haaland, Silva and Foden, so Matt gets a bonus point for the Foden strike. Stu had 4-1. So 2 for Haaland, no points there. I go for Gvardiol, no points there. A goal for Foden, so I guess there's a bonus point there. Sadly, his Bowen prediction for West Ham was never going to come in, as he never actually played in the game. So
he was taken ill on the morning, apparently.
So I did wonder why he wasn't in the squad. I did wonder if it was like a little niggling injury that was just keeping him back for that. But sadly, no available points for Mr. Stuart Woodmansey, just that Foden goal, which means that for the week after the 2 games, I'm last with just the 1 solitary point from 2 games. Poor form. Matt and Andy both had 3 points from 2 games, but winning the final week where more than 1 game is taking place, Mr. Stuart Woodmansey with 5 points. Well done to you, sir. So
I've reversed Matted it. I wasn't on the podcast last week, but I've managed to win by giving the predictions to you when I wasn't here.
Well, this is the thing. So obviously, there's some sort of trick to not being on the pod gives you the secret sauce or something like that. So who can tell? Who can tell? So we have 1 game left to predict, and it is this Saturday's FA Cup final, which is a repeat of last season's FA Cup final, where Manchester City, Andy's adopted team, take on Manchester United. Can't possibly say, but maybe Andy's actual team. Who would ever know? We can't say on the podcast. Obviously, as it's Mr. Cook's adopted side, or his real side, who knows? He will give his prediction last. I have gone for something that won't make me happy, as Manchester United need this. If they win, they will go into the Europa League for next season, which would drop Chelsea, who currently are in 6th position in the Premier League, into the Conference League for next season. And, oh dear, poor old Newcastle in 7th place will have to miss out on the Europa Conference League. Boo-hoo. Whereas if Manchester United don't win, the position for the Conference League does go to Newcastle United, and Chelsea will find themselves in the Europa League. So, sadly, I have gone for a Manchester City 3-2 win. I think this game might be a bit closer than people think. I think City might not take their eye off the ball, so to speak, but I'd like to think that Ten Hag might just go all out for this one. If he thinks he's in danger of losing his job, if it was me, I'd want to go out absolutely swinging for the fences here. I'd just be like bollocks to sort of trying to keep it tight and stuff like that. if you're gonna bin me off, at least bin me off when we get the 5-0 going for the game and stuff like that. So yeah, I think 3-2. So I've gone for a goal apiece for Rodri, Foden, and Alvarez. To the United goals, I've gone for Fernandes and Casemiro. Stu, what have you got down for the cup final?
Not too far away. I have gone for a Manchester City 3, Manchester United 1 scoreline. Little side note as well, of all the title-winning history that came about last weekend, Manchester City are aiming to be the first side to do a double-double as they won the league and cup last year, and no side has repeated that yet. Maybe they've got that stuck on their wall in their dressing room this week. Who knows? The goals for Manchester City, I've got Foden, Haaland and Silva. And for Manchester United, I have also gone for, as they call him on FIFA, Fernandes.
Yeah, I think, annoyingly, I think that is technically how you're supposed to pronounce it, but he's a little prick, so bollocks to him. Matt, what have you got? What have your prediction for the Manchester derby?
I have gone on the one-sided element of this game because I just don't think Man United are very good. And I mean, the only thing that would make you kind of question it is the state that Scott Carson was in coming out of the Man City party. He was wrecked. Apparently escorted out. But I've gone for a 4-1 Man City win. Haaland, Foden, Silva and Alvarez. And Fernandes to get a goal for Manchester United. I think Manchester United are poor, and I'm kind of worried that they've kind of given up on the manager. And
I have a feeling that they'll take the lead. I have this feeling that Man U will end up going 1-0 up, and then Man City will go snap out of the hangover, boys, and then just absolutely whoop them.
Well, bear in mind, obviously, in the fixture last season, United didn't even make it to 10 seconds without conceding. So, but it's the main event, ladies and gentlemen. It's the prediction we've all come here for. Now, the smart money makes me think we've heard this prediction for the last. I could flick through the book, but comfortably, let's say at least 10 times. Is he going to change it up? And is he going to go this over this? Mr. Andrew Cook, what is your prediction for Manchester City versus Manchester United?
In a lot of ways, you're absolutely right. We've seen it all before. However, there's a little bit of something just here that says I can't let it go all the way. So I've gone with a 2-1 Man City win. Same goal scorers as always. I have Diallo.
I like it.
To score for Man United.
Ahmad.
There was a lot
Diallo.
of.
I mean,
can I pronounce?
He says he liked it, but he's a former Sunderland player from my memory, so he's not going to be that enthused.
Well, I believe the talk, obviously, you know that everyone knows about the talk, was that in the January transfer window, Mr. Carrick had gone back to his former employees and said, Is Mr. Diallo available to play out, please? And I believe they were unceremoniously told, go fuck yourself. We need him. We're absolutely dog shit. So,
I mean, they went wrong.
They absolutely weren't wrong. But even after that, he still couldn't get a game for like 3 months. So, work that one out. Baffling. So that brings us to the end of the predictions. But something that did come up last week that we decided to push back for a week was actually something that Mr. Moore had brought up in the fact that Forest are currently going through a potential of a ground update. Now, you'll obviously be able to tell us more than I certainly can. But what's the sort of? I'm assuming this is coming off the back of there was initial plans for them to increase the stand there, increase the capacity by completely rebuilding the Peter Taylor stand, wasn't it?
Yes. So, obviously, has everybody been to the city ground, or?
I have been on a couple of occasions.
So you've got the two ends of the ground that have been done whilst I have been a fan there. So Bridgeford end got done first, then the Trent end got done after that, and they look.
The Bridgeford end, for those who don't know, is the sort of, if you've seen the city ground, it's
like
the weird
chunk taken out of it.
That at the bottom.
Yeah, for the housing behind. They're of its time. They're both of their time, like 90s. The main stand, which is now the Peter Taylor stand, is borderline prehistoric. It's kind of like definitely it's the oldest stand. It was the stand that set on fire, not in the 60s. It needs updating, and that was the one that they've spent God knows how much money and God knows how much time trying to upgrade. Those plans have been approved, and then Forest set about, but obviously with the finance of things, you want to do it the Tottenham way with a 35-year loan, not the Everton way that basically sounds like they've gone to what they call the payday loans type people, like Wonga or something like that.
Or Wonga.
Yeah. They've been selling the silverware at the pawn shop. They're very nice looking new stadium. But in order to get effectively a mortgage or a loan, is what it were, Forest needed to extend the leasehold. So the council owns the area. There's some debate whether it was sold to the council in the 90s to raise cash, where the club were in really bad trouble. But now the council are trying to. So it was either the agreement was either to extend the freehold for 250 years, but the council wanted to up the rent to £1 million a year. From 250 grand, Forest had kind of politely told them where to go. And then it came out maybe 2 weeks ago that the council had made an offer for Forest to buy the land, where the city ground's on, for 10 million. Completely what a random amount. And to be fair, where it is in Nottingham, I dare say that piece of land is probably worth a lot more than that. It's in West Bridgeford. It's right near the cricket ground. If anybody's been to the cricket ground, it's the nice part of Nottingham, the very, very nice part of Nottingham. And then all of a sudden things start. But in the meantime, Forest are saying, well, the council aren't engaging with us. They're trying to rip us off. We're thinking about building a new stadium in Towton, which is really close to the M1, which is also the border to Derby. It's kind of closer to. I think it's on the verge of being closer to Derby City than it is to Nottingham City, which obviously is a massive problem for a lot of Forest fans. I can see, personally, I've struggled with this because I would like to go to Forest. I have gone to Forest a lot. I'm not a person. I haven't gone as much as I'd like to. But now, since they're in the Premiership, it is impossible to get tickets. Absolutely impossible to get tickets. And if they increase the capacity to 40,000, which is what will happen if they do the Peter Taylor stand, my odds will increase. But not as much. Not by if they build this 50,000 mega stadium, a la, it feels horrible saying it, a la Spurs. But I do agree with the Forest fans side of things, and I'm not particularly sentimental about it being in the city because I'm not from there. But it would be a shame that if I know the place where they're building it because we have friends that live there. You don't want the ground there. It's not near anything. It's just near some houses, and that's it. There's apparently another site in Nottingham that they're looking at that's still near to the river. But I think the kind of sentimental romanticist of me is I like the fact that it's the three stadia near each other. You've got Forest, you've got Meadow Lane, and you've got Trent Bridge all near there. They've all hosted international sport. It's this thing of Forest used to talk about Duncan McKenzie, who was a player in the 60s who could throw a golf ball from the centre circle in the Forest Stadium into Meadow Lane because he was that much of an athlete. And I think for me, what I was kind of, I've kind of like set my kind of, the ideal thing for me would be if someone did, like Spurs did, where the ground is now, but you turn it 90 degrees because Forest would own the land. Forest own the land behind as well. So you'd be able to turn the ground round, and effectively the Trent End would be the side of the pitch, the side of the pitch as opposed to the goal end. So my kind of thing was, speaking as fans of clubs that have moved stadium, what were your thoughts?
So I think Stu will probably be the best one to comment on this because he'll have been to both Hull's old ground and Hull's new ground. Whereas I was, because my dad wasn't a Middlesbrough fan, he never really took me to Ayresome Park when I was a youngster. We just used to go to pools instead. So I've only ever really known the Riverside, and obviously that is just how I've always known going to the borough. So it's never really been an issue for me. So I'll let Stu take this one.
Well, it's a funny one because for Hull, it kind of coincided with a huge upturn. Like when we were still at Boothry Park, it was off the back of being locked out of our own ground for a period of time, and the ground was falling down. One end had a quick save in it, so it was they moved because they needed to move. That obviously there's the sentimental side of it, and where Boothry Park used to be is now all new build houses, and they've named all the streets after different footballers. There's like Black and Amber Way and things like that. So they've not just trampled on it and left it be. That there are things on the site that are still relevant to the club in terms of addresses and stuff. But I'm not of the age of where Boothry Park was a huge part of my sort of time. Obviously, I've been, but I've definitely been more to the KC as it was, and now the MKM over my sort of fandom. But like I say, it relates to a massive upswing in fortune for City because it wasn't really that long after they moved to the new stadium where they went from the old Division 3 to the Championship in sort of back-to-back promotions. So I understand the sort of sentimental side of it, and I actually think that draw is probably increased with Forest because, without being a twat to my own club, Forest have got that history. literally the only thing you can say about Boothry Park was that it was the site of the first ever competitive penalty shootout, and now that's somebody's front garden. I mean, if that's your front garden, that's quite a cool thing. But I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. I think if I was a Forest fan, I genuinely think my preference would be what Matt said about spinning it 90 and keeping it at the same site. But they've got to then offset. At the end of the day, it's about the money, and Forest more than anybody know that this season. And if the new ground has more commercial prosperity, there's only one thing that's going to win out, because even if it pisses a few people off, they'll still go.
I think that's the thing for me is I think until they've probably seen the money, that the City ground makes, and it's I think it's difficult. I reckon anybody my age and under, obviously anybody 50 or over is no, you can't leave the City ground. We've got to stay there. It's where we won European Cups, Cloughie, blah, 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 all that kind of thing. But there's probably people my age that are like, we did see some good times, but then, Christ almighty, we've had 25 years of shit. And when you go to the ground, the toilets are minging. I think that's the kind of thing of like, I don't like going to the toilet in public anyway, because I'm a bit kind of thingy when the toilets are gross. And, I mean, to be fair, when I went to the Vale at the start of the season, I forgot, it makes Forest toilets look palatial at Vale Park, because you have to have a little wander down the way to go to the toilets, and you are paddling in piss by 3:10. But Forest is in that kind of gross kind of level, and I think as you're moving with the times, and you've got kids, and there's obviously more women in football, the women facilities at Forest is shocking. There's not much. And I think there's that kind of thing of, like, even the most die-hard fans that are like, oh, it's our ground, it's our home, it's where everything happened. I think there's got to be a level of realisation of, we're behind the times now. I think there was a podcast I was listening to, and they had a Spurs fan on talking about their stadium, and he was like, I'm just glad that it's in the same space that White Hart Lane was, so it's still home. They had a West Ham fan on there that was like, I hate our ground. It's tired. It's already tired and old, and it's only 12 years old. It's not fit for purpose because the atmosphere disappears because it's an athletic stadium. We've been to watch baseball, so the fact you can play baseball there as well shows what it is. And then they had an Everton fan on, which is probably Forest's closest comparison of the glory days are 40 years ago. And that ground is looking that old. And he was like, I can't wait. I just can't wait to get to the new ground because they've done it properly. They've looked at the acoustics. They've made it a small tight. Even though it's like 40, 50,000, it's still tight. And that's where I don't want them to move to Tota. That's my kind of thing. I don't want them moving there because that's Derby. It might as well, and that's not right. If they do move, it'll be a shame, but hopefully they'll stay close to the city. And preferably, it will be where the City ground is now. It'll be 2 seasons. We'll probably have to play at County, which will knock the funding because they haven't got exec stands. They haven't got all that executive seating. Maybe play it at Trent Bridge. I don't know if they'll be able to play at the cricket ground. There's probably better facilities and more kind of realistic things for there. I mean, the one thing they can't do is go down the way to Derby or Leicester to play their games because I don't know whether the fans would like that at all. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting because the Marinakis reign has been alright so far. This could be a real bad turn if he does it wrong. And at the moment, it's looking like he's doing it wrong. He's like trying to be a little bit underhand and doing interviews in the Daily Mail about it. Did I send you the pictures of it, like where he's kind of like sultry kind of look about him.
I think you had, yeah.
Wearing a nice black shirt to thin him out.
Obviously, if this is like his legacy and stuff like that, then he's going to be harshly judged, shall we say? But before we go on with it, I believe Mr. Woodmansey has some Hull updates for us to go through. But before we get to those Hull updates, we are just going to take a small break, and then Mr. Woodmansey can be unleashed with his Hull updates as it were. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Recording in progress. So we're gonna remove you from those tenterhooks that you're all currently very well perched on. So, Mr. Woodmansey, you went to, was this classed as an open forum by the chairman?
I mean, he's got a bit more of an ego than that. It was an evening with.
Oh.
And they had proper backdrops and stuff for it as well. It's not his first rodeo. He's done this before. But it was a bit strange because as Paul alluded to at the beginning of the podcast last week, I obviously was missing and didn't proceed to go into why at that point. You'll be able to tell if you're watching on YouTube or listening along. Operation hasn't happened yet, so we're all good there. And indeed, it was this meeting with Ajun Ilijali. Forgive me because I will have butchered that. I got an email on Monday night basically inviting me to go, and you had to just click on to say that you were going. And when I got there on Wednesday, there was probably about 200 people in the Kingston suite at the MKM Stadium. And I was interested, I was more keen on going because obviously the week before was the sacking of Liam Rosenior, and whilst he hadn't been necessarily quiet in the media, the chairman that is, you kind of got the feeling that because it was then going to be a bit more of an intimate event, he's got this knack of, at the end of the day, he's a football fan, and he'll go off about stuff from a fan's perspective, but obviously as a guy with a bit more swing than everyone else. And he certainly didn't disappoint in that regard. A little bit of a strange sort of start was that he talked for about 20 minutes as to the sacking and stuff like that. And then we were all evacuated from the building because the fire alarms were going off in the north stand. They're currently relaying the pitch about halfway through that, and I think somebody had tripped something out in the north stand. So as the alarms are going off, he stood on stage with a microphone saying, well, if this is Turkey, we just wait until they come and tell us to leave. We just ignore the alarms. To which cue a huge set of security that came and essentially got everybody out of the building. So it was a bit disjointed really at the beginning. But I went as a fan kind of wanting to hear it from the horse's mouth as to what had happened with Rosenior, because at the time it happened, probably a little bit of resentment, because the manager at the time had a real close connection with the club. He's got family from the area, as the famous song goes. His nan is from Hull. Played in the FA Cup final for us, the only time we've ever been, like stuff like that. So like a really sentimental manager, and it's not very often that you'll A, get that, and B, it ends up being quite as still deemed successful as it has been. As we've discussed on the podcast many times, like going from 15th to 7th in the space of one season is not bad. Missing out on the playoffs by one game, effectively. So what happened? Well, the chairman proceeded to explain his decision, and in due course ended up throwing some of the current playing squad under the bus unceremoniously, which was kind of the bizarre part of it. So, the chairman explained that he doesn't make the decisions on his own. he has a group of 5 or 6 people. I'm not quite sure why he wasn't more specific than that. Experts in their fields, as he put it, and he likes to call this group the football brain. Bear with me, it gets weirder. And basically, they talk about the decisions. They were to make suggestions as a group to the manager, but ultimately it was the manager's decision. So some of these suggestions, cast your minds back to the how many podcasts we've done to hear me talk about Ryan Alsop letting in goals at the near post. Definitely more than once. This was noticed by the football brain, and it was suggested in the January transfer window that a new keeper was needed to be brought in, and at the time they had a loan space available. Liam Rossini said he didn't want to use that loan space on a goalkeeper. Can't argue with the loans that he did bring in, because obviously one of those was Carvalho. So fair enough, that that particular decision worked out, but they weren't happy with the goalkeeper situation still, so they went out and bought Ivor Pando, the Croatia under-21s goalkeeper. All this stuff was happening with Alsop. The suggestion was made, maybe give him a rest. Maybe let the new guy have a go. Rossini said that apparently, obviously this is what the chairman said, he said, as it were, that he wasn't good enough to play in the Championship, and therefore he was sticking with Alsop. Okay, that happened. The goals continued to be let in. So that was kind of maybe not great in Rossini's favour. The other side of it was that there was a period, again, you'll remember this, of 5 or 6 games in a row where they didn't lose, but they didn't win either. And this was the period of time where Rossini had massively taken to playing without a striker on the pitch. Again, the football brain suggested that maybe we should play a striker, considering that we brought in Billy Sharp, Noah Ohio, had Connolly in the building, and amongst others. But no, the suggestion was made, and the suggestion not taken on board, and they continued to play without a striker, and subsequently ended up drawing games that we should have won, lost games that we should have drawn. So that's that. It was basically the business that was done in January and the decisions that came off the back of that had put a strain on the relationship, and basically it comes to the conclusion as the group that that was the first. They'd felt pessimistic about what was to come with the manager. So rather than string it out and let things go down the pan, they terminated the contract now, so that whoever's coming in has got time to build in pre-season and basically start again. The strange part about the timing of it all, though, was that we didn't then have a manager in place, still done officially, in time for last weekend. Now, the weekend past was officially the weekend where clubs have to notify their players that are coming, their contracts are up this year, if they're to be offered a new deal or not, or if people have got options on their contracts if they were going to be taken up. Didn't have a manager in place, so everybody pretty much whose contract was up this year has gone. Paul not going to be too upset about it, because one of them was Aaron Connolly. By the way, the thing that he'd said about
my tummy.
The thing that he'd said about bringing in Noah Ohio was, under 21's Netherlands striker. Some weeks couldn't even get in the stand, never mind on the subs bench. But yet we would put Aaron Connolly on the bench, who had his issues, were the words that he'd used. Also said that some of those issues were similar to Tufan in his first season with Hull, which put 2 and 2 together and read between said lines. And basically that was the chairman saying that Connolly was too fat to play football. Tufan got himself in shape and sorted himself out Connolly still managed to score 8 goals as the fat lad last season, so not the worst return in the world for a guy who didn't play half of the games.
The fatties.
So, yeah, it was a very strange evening. I got what I wanted from it in the sense of I don't necessarily agree with the decision still about sacking Rossini, but I certainly understand the logic and how they got to that decision. And at the end of the day, it's his club. So, the decisions that he makes as chairman, backed by a group or not, will be what he's remembered for. So if that's his conviction and that's his logic, I'm fine with that. The interesting point, as I raised to you guys, and Paul will again kill me for mentioning this, will be he's been touted, Rossini this is, as now potentially being the next Sunderland manager. So what happens when Sunderland get in the playoffs next season and Hull don't, would be my question.
But this is always the danger, isn't it? I think I don't know if I said it on the podcast, but I certainly might have said it when we were just chatting. Obviously, last season when Borough sacked Chris Wilder, and obviously brought in Michael Carrick, and it obviously worked because obviously they ended up finishing the season really well, got in the playoffs, just fell at the semi-final hurdle. But my main concern was that Wilder was going to go somewhere else, get another team into the playoffs, and inevitably be the one to knock Borough out of the playoffs. Obviously, it didn't happen that way, but that is always the concern, that you've got a manager who's proved that he's probably, in the top 10 or so managers in the division, and obviously if he does get snapped up by someone and they have a better season than Hull, the chairman's going to look like a bit of a tit. Let's be honest.
I still stand by that. I genuinely think that this is still his first misstep as owner. For everything he's done right, if it goes pear-shaped, this will be the thing that sticks in people's minds because of, again, how sentimental the link was to Rossini. He did say at the end of the meeting that he will only stay at Hull for as long as he's making improvements, and that didn't sit well with me either. As that's not a closing. That was right near the end of the night, and to me, that's not a closing statement because that basically came across to me as if you all start to piss me off and I'm not enjoying it, I'm on my way. For all of the talk for the rest of the beginning part of the night, him saying that the 2 years that he's had at Hull have been two of the most enjoyable years he's had in his career and all the rest of it. Just that last comment didn't sit very well with me. I appreciated all the explanation that came before it, but I didn't feel that there was a need for him to say that, publicly. I'd be very surprised if his PR team have said, "Oh, do you know what? That went really well," because it was a bit odd. But I get the impression that it's probably not the last time it'll happen, purely from an ego side of things. And again, to his credit, he said that he wants to use it. He wants to keep the communication lines between him and the fans open. There's open, and there's telling 250 and the local media that you think the goalkeeper we've had all season is completely shit. So, by the way, who's still under contract with the club as well. He wasn't one of the released players.
This was the point that I wanted to raise. It was a case of it's all well and good saying that the centre forward that that's going to be out of contract and it's clearly not going to be getting renewed is basically a fat dumpy waste of space. That's fine. You don't have to look that guy in the eye when he turns up for pre-season training and then you basically called him out for being absolutely dog shit. That's not going to do anything for Allsop's confidence. I know you'd obviously sort of echoed things of a similar sort of nature, but you don't own the fucking club, so
yeah,
you're allowed to say stuff like that. You're a supporter.
Well, he did also mention that he was expecting that the deal with the new manager was about 95% done, and he said if everything went well, that would be announced this week. Obviously, hasn't happened yet, or would have delivered that news. But during the course of the evening, the odds on Tim Walter being appointed as Hull manager were halved. So obviously the news of him talking and naming him directly in that evening, that news got out pretty sharpish. Again, nothing's been cemented this week. But I'd be very surprised after what he was saying last week if that fell through. He's not somebody I was aware of before his name cropped up in the conversation. He's apparently the former Hamburg head coach, and very openly likes attacking style of football, which is what the chairman wants to bring. He said that his favourite game of the season was the 3-3 draw at home to Ipswich, which was the last home game of the season, because the whole game was pretty much attacking, and the fans were the loudest that he's ever heard them, and he wants the stadium to be like that every week. Spoiler alert, doesn't happen. It would be great if it was that loud and that exciting, but you're not going to get that every week. His theory on this, by the way, was that if you play attacking football, you might lose a game 3-2, but at least you've scored 2 goals. So next week you might win 4-0. I mean, pretty sure that's not written down as like official rules anywhere. But I get what he means. I understand what he means. But again, that's probably just my sort of, kind of not loyalty. That's maybe the wrong word. But if it's not the way that Rossini was playing, but yeah, we got results.
I think the thing that I always like springs to mind when stuff like this happens is there's a reason why you employ football people in football positions. It's all well and good him saying, "Oh, my favourite game of the season was this absolute carnage one where because we kept conceding, we had to keep attacking and we kept scoring, and I really liked it and it was so good." That's all well and good, but you're never going to get that as every game. If you get that as every game, all that happens is that Kevin Keegan ends up leaving your club halfway through the project because his head's fucking melted, because his team's all over the fucking place. You can't be the all-out, entertaining, attacking game, like football team, all the time, because it just doesn't work. You have to have some pragmatism about you, and you have to sort of know when the time is to shut up shop and when the time is to defend a 1-0 lead. And honestly, at times, you have to know when there's times to defend a 0-0 and like just realise that a point is the way to go and stuff like that. And there's probably a reason why, a mega rich billionaire hasn't ever won anything without employing someone who at least has a clue what they're talking about when it comes to stuff on the pitch. So I would obviously he doesn't need my advice, because clearly he's made much better of his life than I have. But
he's got the football brain to fall back on, Paul, as well. Don't forget.
Well, but it's that sort of thing of not necessarily be careful what you wish for, but it would be that sort of thing of maybe don't have ideas above your station. Like, employ the people that actually know what's going on from a football side of things. Don't just have your sort of glad-handing yes man who's going to sit there and say, "Oh yeah, we definitely should go with this approach," and stuff like that. Because in the long run, that's probably not going to get you where you want to be.
I know that I've been obviously talking about it a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I think that is genuinely the idea of having that team of people behind him that have got more of an idea. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And at first, when he started talking about it and he started referencing it as the football brain, I was like, this guy's a lunatic. But a couple of days after the meeting had happened, Liam Rossini released a statement through the League Managers Association, and he, direct quote from it was something to the effect of, he'd like to thank Ajun Khan and the football brain with his time at Hull. So it's obviously a thing. Obviously a thing. The last point on it that I will say is that he talked a lot about financial fair play and needing to stick by the rules, and obviously that's been a huge sort of thing this season particularly. And he said that in the current setup and the money that the club's bringing in, he would be allowed to invest £14 million of his own money. He said he could. He said I don't want to be that guy. I could put a lot more in than that, 30 million, 40 million, but I physically can't do it. I'm not allowed. To which, not more than 10 minutes later, somebody asked him why we weren't going to spend £10 million on Liam Delap. Like, but what would you then do with the remaining £4 million? Like, you're not going to get that much for that, if you want to be pushing. So, yeah. I think he's a very smart guy. I think he knows what he's doing. It's just a shame that some of the questions weren't particularly as smart as he is. You're on mute, Paul. Speaking of people,
I was just about to say. Speaking of smarts,
it's because I've been coughing for the last what feels about 8 years. So every time I keep feeling cough. That line, is it too easy to say? Probably sums up about 75% of football supporters. Why have we not signed this striker? The manager knows we're short in that area. Why have we not just gone out and signed whoever we can? Because that's not the way that football works.
No. I mean, just to further emphasise the quality of the questions that were asked of the chairman that night, a lady who was slightly elderly asked, what was the point in bringing in Billy Clark in the January transfer window?
what was the answer?
He said we didn't. His name is Billy Sharp. So yeah,
the guy that I follow on Twitter. There's a Hull City fan, and he was basically not so much live tweeting the whole thing, but he was basically just giving updates of the choicest cuts, as it were, from the meeting, and it sounded like it was absolutely spectacular. But yeah, that was a personal highlight. Billy Clark.
There was a man who was trying to. The thing that I was saying about you lose 3-2 one week, you win 4-0 the next week. There was a guy who was really trying to take him to task on it and just wouldn't let it lie. And in the end, people just got sick of him repetitively asking, so just booed him, which was just. But yeah, an interesting evening, worth going. But yeah, we'll see if the talk of the new manager unveils itself by this time next week.
Yes, indeed. Obviously, Mr. Woodmansey referring to the fact that next week will be the last podcast of the season for us. Obviously, we'll go through the result of the FA Cup final, and then it'll be our season review wrap-up episode. Obviously, we're back in, I want to say probably late July. I believe we made some pre-season podcast predictions for our respective teams and the respective divisions that those teams have found themselves in. We'll go through those. We'll see who was the closest, if anyone got any spot on, if anyone was absolutely horrendously out with theirs. I do remember doing some predictions one year when I had Leicester to finish rock bottom of the league. That was the year, of course, that they won the Premier League. That was a great prediction for myself. I'm sure there'll be.
Don't know why this year.
I'm sure there'll be at least one prediction amongst all of ours that was an absolute corker. But we'll go through those next week. We'll see. There was a new wrinkle that we obviously had this season where Mr. Cook started on a certain team. Did he end on the same team, or how many times did he change teams during the course of the season? We'll get to the bottom of that. But yes, that will be your lot for the season next week. And that is your lot for this week, I'm afraid to say. Thank you, as always, to these three gentlemen for sitting with me and going through the details of their team and the ins and outs of the rest of the football world. Join us again next week, where it will be your last one for this current season. But until then, take care of yourselves, keep an eye out for each other, and we'll see you all next week. Tatty bye, fan.
So there you go, what do you think to that? Another one done, another one gone, nearly all of them gone. There'll be next week's, obviously, with the roundup of the season and the last game and all of that. But yeah, very much nearly done now. Big thank you for watching, big thank you for listening. Sorry again for the problem, technical hitch and all that. Before you go, if you haven't already, please do like, share, subscribe and comment. Leave a review where you can leave a review, and check out the website, thecookiecast.com. There we've got social media links and an email button, and that way you can get in touch with us. That is it for this one. Until next time, I'm going to say bye, and I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to these grumpy old men talk about football. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share and subscribe.